So you can see my screen. So basically, we started this initiative to support the growing community of Tableau data analytics users around the state of Rhode Island too. And usually in the face-to-face world, pre-COVID, we used to get about 90, 100 people per session. So thank you guys for coming out in the virtual world. And hopefully, we'll, maybe in the fall, maybe by the end of the year, we'll be able to come back to a face-to-face event where we can network together and actually share food too. And you can check out the Providence Public Library's new spaces. We have many amazing new spaces that are great for meetings and for classes, and it's an amazing building. If you ever want a tour, you can just find me on PPL, and I'm happy to give people a tour of the building right now. It's not open to the general public yet. We just have a browsing section and some computers open to the public right now. But hopefully these groups will move back to a face-to-face setting by the end of the year too. But we're virtual tonight, and we're going to talk about basically, you have me just talk about RITUG, and then I'm going to give it to Bill, who's going to mention our latest Data for Good project. This is an offshoot of RITUG that we've been doing for the last few years, where Bill and a dedicated group of volunteers take data sets from local nonprofits, and they're able to help those nonprofits tell data stories, right? And maybe answer questions that they had about their data, or create realizations that they didn't know existed about their data too. And we have a really cool project we'd like to share with you tonight on that too. And then afterwards, we'll be looking at, Bill, what's on the agenda after that? I just lost the agenda. Oh, figures.
Yeah, we've got your introduction, we've got the Data for Good. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to go right into Tableau desktop. Kind of like some of the nice features that were released in the last 12 months or so. And Nnenna is going to talk about that. And she's a SE in Tableau, right? Correct? And she'll be talking about that. And then we'll close. So we're trying to keep this to an hour so that people, we know people do many Zoom meetings. We're trying to keep this efficient and interesting and keep it moving along.
Yeah, here you. So that's where we're at too. So so thanks, Bill. Yeah, and thanks, Nnenna, for joining us too, speaking with us tonight. Really appreciate it too. So anyway, again, thanks so much for your for coming out to the meeting tonight, for helping us keep RITUG going in this virtual environment, and can't wait to see you guys in person too. So thanks again so much. So Bill, I'm going to introduce Bill Rebell here, and Bill has been a wonderful volunteer with us, a project manager by trade. And he's going to talk about our latest and Data for Good project and upcoming Data for Good project too. All right, I'll stop the sharing. Hand it over to you, Bill. Thanks.
All right, thanks. I'm just looking for screen share here so I can do this. And hey, so far so good. I'm always a little slow at getting this thing rolling, so just bear with me for a second. Okay. Chris, can you see my screen?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, we've been running these Data Good projects for a few years now. And we try to do one a quarter, but sometimes we do a couple a year or 3 a year, but I'd like to see us try to get to one every quarter, which would be helpful. And it's called the Rhode Island. It's part of the Rhode Island Tableau user group. It's our Data for Good, and it's always focused on Rhode Island nonprofits. And we just let me talk about a second is how you get involved with this. First of all, Rhode Island Tableau user group. It's an offshoot of that, and it's really to help make our communities better through data. And how you get involved, what's your commitment, and what do you get out of it? So if you become a volunteer, okay, this always takes a minute. Okay, there we go. So when you become a volunteer, what we attempt to do is keep the volunteer commitment to 4 weeks, 4 meetings. It's a meeting a week, and they usually run an hour. And I said average because sometimes, particularly at the beginning, we'll probably run like an hour and a half because we're trying to go through the requirements. And after that, the meetings become a little bit shorter, typically. There's a total investment is about 20 hours, and I'm going to say about because it could go over a little bit, but that's what we try to do. And you'll be involved with, helping get the requirements clarified, cleaning some data, and create the visualizations that we need for the project. Okay, so that's the work you've got to do. And then what do you get out of it? Well, what you do is what you gain is you work on data, not the same data you work on every day. So I heard people say that all the time. This is great. I'm sick and tired of doing the same data every day. This is a nice change from what I normally do. And you get to connect with a lot of great people. I mean, that's another major benefit. And you learn. We learn from each other. I mean, in the last project, I'm going to just mention Andrew's name. Andrew Shefford was kind of the expert to get us going because it was a little more complicated. And some of the people on the project weren't familiar with a lot of things we need to do. So he pulled us through. So he did a great job. And we help a nonprofit understand their data that helps their community. So that's the big part of it, because the nonprofit wants to understand their data for a specific reason. They're trying to get it out. They're trying to help their community. So they need information to make that happen. And we help them do that. Some of the past data for good projects we were involved with is listed down at the bottom here. And there's several. And I think there's 2 more that I don't remember. I tried to look up in my notes, but I don't have them. But we did quite a few. So, and they're all successful. So what I want to talk about now is our last project was for the Women's Fund of Rhode Island. And the Women's Fund really invests in women and girls and women. And they invest in programs that support gender equality. And that's their main thrust. And the leader of that team was Ellen Brown. She's the Director of Development Operations. So we had a really good rapport. This was a tough project, by the way. And I'm just going to go to talk about that project a little bit now. So that's a little bit about the Women's Fund. If you want to know more about it, just go to Women's Fund Rhode Island, and it'll pop right up in your browser. So our requirements, this what they wanted us to do is to build what they call the well-being index. Okay. And these are basically the requirements. I'm not going to read through them all, but I'll read through, well, there's only 4. So build an interactive tool, consists of 5 dimensions, and those are the dimensions they wanted: women's health, safety. And what they've done is they've done research and surveys to gather this data from the state, from people in different cities. And so in their visualization that we did is all the stats that they collected, and we're just reporting on them. And it encompasses multiple indicators, rank, and it contains a map of Rhode Island cities and towns. The problem we had is trying to get that map to work. That was the tough part because it was a spatial file, and this project got a little dicey. So it was interesting. It included policy briefs that included for each dimension to share ideas about what policy makers can do. So that's in there as well. So this was an interesting project, a little different than we normally work on because of the spatial file stuff and how the data was arranged. So I think that's all I got to say there. And the Women's Fund project. The project team were all these people here. And like I said earlier, because of what ended up happening with this project, we had some issues. So a lot of people had to drop out because you can't get time commitments forever from people. They have real work to do. So the project challenge was the timeless, the data updates, and the formatting for the data. It took us a little longer to get all the data required than we thought. We thought we had it all. And as you know how projects go, it kind of blindsided us when they said, oh, that's really not the data we want to use. We want to use this data. And that's really not the format of the data. So we want you to, here's some new data we want you to add. So that kind of went on. And unfortunately, it made the project stretch out. So a lot of people, as you can see, couldn't stay that long. But fortunately, Andrew and Dexter continued onward. Andrew being the principal designer, and Dexter was support and helped him design some of the pieces. So it was definitely a challenge. And the results of the project was a news release came out on January 8th by the Women's Fund announcing the launch of the centralized Women's Wellbeing Index. So it's out on their website. They publicized it all on all the media that they could. And so it's out there for people to look at. So very successful project and okay. And the thrust of the project went on these two guys. And I felt kind of bad about it, but hey, they were troopers and they stuck with it. I'm not going to go there right now. Andrew, I don't know if he's on here. I hope he can come in. Andrew, you want to kind of do a quick discussion about some of the things that you ran into and a quick demo of the index?
Yeah, hello everybody. Perfect. So yeah, so I'll be able to talk about this quickly. It was really a great project, and I don't know if we're able to pull it up here. Let me just go to the website here. But yeah, it was certainly an interesting challenge, to say the least. I think one of the really fun things about this project was the fact that we had a template that we were trying to emulate. And so they were really good that the Women's Fund crew had this California template they wanted us to be able to go and manage. And it had some interesting features in it that we had to really figure out how to do. So I'm just going to pull it open right here real quick. And so hopefully everyone can see this. And so what ended up happening is it was kind of a real multi-layered process of being able to go through it. You know, the first one is trying to figure out, you know, how to make these spatial files work. And I recall early in the project, I had gone through and, you know, kind of hacked together my own version of it, just kind of taking some random points and trying to make like a rough map of Rhode Island here. And Bill was able to point us to a spatial file he had that we were able to use and kind of make it look a lot nicer and a lot more professional with the tools we had. So then it was a question of trying to match, you know, these up with this kind of index on the left. You know, it took a little bit of doing there, but I think the design process was really cool. And then once we had these kind of dashboards set, it was using the storyboard tool within Tableau to then be able to go through and create these different buckets of their metrics, and then be able to, within them, you know, look at these different features along the way. So definitely a lot of interesting stuff to be a part of. You know, I certainly learned a lot from about the Women's Fund and their mission, and you know how they're using these efforts in order to try to improve the lives of women and girls across the state, and all the different communities that are impacted by this. So yeah, I thought it was a really fun project, and you know, thanks to Bill for involving me in this, and you know, thanks to Dexter and everyone else who was able to support it. You know, the library for even putting on all this stuff. The Women's Fund of Rhode Island's doing great work. There's just so many awesome people who were involved in this project. So you know, I really had a fun time.
Yes, thanks for sticking in there, sticking with it. Without you, I don't know, it would have been a tough road. Really appreciate it. Because how many hours do you think it took us? Because I was thinking we doubled the hours, at least 40, at least.
Yeah, I would say probably it was about that. It was, you know, a lot of the work was getting these kind of initial dashboards. And then, like you said, that kind of, once we got kind of a rough idea where we were going, that sort of then back and forth about, you know, okay, you know, make sure we're changing some colors. And then, you know, I think at one point, you know, we had to throw in a couple of extra pieces here and there. And then like every time we had to make one change to a dashboard, it was making it 6 times because we have each of the 6 dashboards that are all built into the story. So that was just a lot of that repetition kind of down the road, is, you know, making sure everything looked as nice as it could and match stuff up as we went along. So fortunately kind of worked out for my schedule to be able to do a lot of that fine-tuned work. But yeah, I would guess probably about 40 hours would be that.
Yeah. Why don't you give an example of the, just click on one like health and just kind of go through what it shows.
Yeah, for sure. So under health, you know, they had, you know, all these kind of fields that were already preset. So, you know, insurance, obesity, prenatal care, psychological distress.
And by the way, some of those still, they still don't have data for. I looked on it earlier. They're blank, but they will fill it in as time goes on. They're still doing surveys. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the nice things about this. And one of the things I felt really good leaving them with this is there are certainly ways for them to expand it too. So right now, you know, the policy recommendations don't go anywhere, but that's something as they create PDFs with their policy recommendations on how to influence, you know, health for women in the state, they can just add that right there, have it a download, and be able to go. but yeah, no, the data set that they had, ended up being pretty good. And so, you're able to tell based on, percentage of women with delayed prenatal care, where the problem areas are in the state. And I think, some of those design features of not using red and green. So being, I think one, it matches with their color scheme, which looks nice. But then two, I think it's also for colorblind individuals to make sure that they are able to see and interact with this map as well and be as colorblind friendly as possible, which is one of those design things I think that sometimes falls through the cracks with design. People love a good red-green index, but just one of those additional things to think about if you're able to accommodate that. But then, yeah, figuring out how to map some of these indicators of, what is the state average and how do all of these metrics compare to a state average. So not just being able to see where they rank, but then, this context just on its own, like, I don't know if 20% is how bad that is compared to everybody else in the state. And, this gives you a good feel for, yeah, it's bad, or like, yeah, it's really bad in some areas, or which areas of the state are overperforming pretty well. So if anyone wants to see the California one under methodologies, when you go into this, you're able to click on that link and that'll link you over to the California base example that we had. And yeah, so I think there's some really interesting insights that you're able to pull out of this as you just kind of go through, commute time. It's something I didn't really think about as something that's going to be really influencing, economic outcomes of women in the state, but it's something that they're able to track and have information on and, then make policy on. And so obviously it makes sense to me that, Block Island would be a place that there's limited commute times, but then, kind of going down and seeing which communities it's a little bit greater and the challenges that brings, I think was just a really interesting insights to be able to use this for, and hopefully they're able to get some good policy recommendations out of these.
Yep. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, this was definitely interesting. And the map's interactive too, by the way. You can click anywhere you want on the map and it shows the city on the left-hand side, or you can do vice versa. It'll show you where the city is on the map when you click on it. So, which is kind of a cool feature too. Okay. All right, Andrew, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, so let me go back. I got to share the screen again for one last time.
Hey, Bill, I got a question too for the panelists. Actually, it's for Andrew. Shar mentioned he's new to Tableau, and once you were done with the dashboard, did you provide JPEGs for Women's Fund Rhode Island to add to their website?
Oops, sorry, could you repeat the question there? I was kind of rejoining.
Sure. Sure, I had a question too. Someone's new to Tableau and they said, once you were done with the dashboard, did you provide JPEGs for the Women's Fund Rhode Island to add to the website?
So what I left them with was the kind of base Tableau workbook with kind of all the dashboards in there, all the vizzes that, had to go into that, all the JPEGs that are in there. And so everything down the right-hand side, all of those little social media hits that I linked through for them. I think there's a couple of other images kind of throughout that. I did provide them those resources, provided them a quick recording just of kind of how some of the little quirky calculations and features worked. And then I think there might have been just some other notes and things that I noticed along the way about kind of how their data set worked and some of those other features. So yeah, they did get kind of a full package from me at the end there.
Yeah, I don't think there's any individual JPEGs in there. It's a Tableau workbook. So everything's included in the workbook. And if you have what they call Tableau Reader, which is free, you can actually go in and look at this with the free Tableau tool. So you don't have to have Tableau to see it. And they've got it on their website now. So they ported it into their website. It's fully functional, just like you'd see it on the Tableau page anyways. So just go to their website, you'll see the whole thing.
Great, thanks. And Tina asked another question. Did you work in Tableau desktop or Tableau public?
A desktop, yeah. But I think a lot of the people on the team were also working in Tableau public. So I think there were a combination of us who were doing different things in both platforms. And I think it worked pretty seamlessly.
Yep. Any other questions?
Let's see. Pranav asked, did you send them a TWBX file?
I believe so, yes.
Thanks for the questions, guys.
All right, that's it. All right, so I'm just going to thank you, Andrew.
Perfect, thank you guys.
I'm just going to go back in here for 1 second. I'm showing my screen, it says, okay? Can you see that? Yeah, okay. And I'm just talking about the next Data for Good project, which is coming up. It's for the Salt Pond Coalition. And Alicia, what's her name? Heikinger is the director there. And she's going to come on and just talk about Salt Pond Coalition, what it's about. She's already given me some requirements. I've looked at the data. So I think we're in pretty good shape. So sometime next week, I'm going to be asking for volunteers for this project. And at the bottom of the screen here, you can send, if you're interested, send me an email and just say Salt Pond Coalition as the subject. And I'll get you on the list. And we usually limit the number of people, volunteers. We can't have 50 people on it. So we usually limit the number of volunteers for about a dozen. So that's what we're gonna kind of like shoot for. But Alicia, are you on?
I'm here.
Okay. You want to talk about your Salt Pond Coalition for a bit?
Yes, I do. I'm gonna see if I can I share my screen?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to stop sharing mine.
Okay. Give me 1 second to pull this up.
Is it letting you share?
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful.
And come on. There we go. Hi, everybody. So my name is Alicia Schaffner. It was Eichinger. It just changed to Schaffner.
Hey, you gotta keep me updated.
Sorry. Literally just changed. I'm the executive director of the Salt Ponds Coalition. I've been working there since 2014. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of who we are and where we're from in the state. So where are the salt ponds? They are in South County, little blown up view. We work in the towns of Westerly, Charlestown, South Kingstown, and Narragansett. There are quite a few ponds in South County. We test primarily we monitor 6 to sometimes 7 of them, depending upon how many volunteers we have and the access that we have. There's a few ponds, Maschog being the primary one, where we don't always have access to the pond. If we have a friendly neighbor, it works out, but if not. I don't know if any of you guys have been on the salt ponds. They're basically what's known as a coastal lagoon, except for Point Judith Pond, which is a true estuary, meaning that it's a body of water that has both fresh and salt water inputs. But basically all of these ponds are connected to the ocean in one way or another, most of them via man-made opening, or what we call a breachway. They're actually formed a very long time ago when there were glaciers in the area, basically carved out these salt ponds, and eventually they filled with water. So here's a quick overview. Toward the left of the screen, you see Point Judith Pond. So if you've ever been on the Block Island Ferry or gone to some of the restaurants down there, Potter Pond, if you've been to the Matunic Oyster Bar, that's the pond to the right. That's right on Potter Pond. Ninigret and Green Hill Pond. So if you've ever been to the Ninigret Wildlife Refuge, you've been by Ninigret Pond. Quonochontaug Pond is the pond directly to the west of Ninigret. There's a couple of restaurants on there. And then Winnipeg Pond, if you've ever been to Misquamicut Beach, this is the pond directly behind Misquamicut Beach on Atlantic Avenue in Westerly. So those are the major salt ponds that we monitor. The reason why they're important, they are habitat for diverse species of wildlife. They're in the summertime never empty. They're used for a lot of different recreation. A clean pond means increased local property values, and we know this. Green Hill Pond, which is probably the most polluted pond, it's close to shellfishing. The same house on that pond might be, $800,000, $900,000. The same house on Quonny or Ninigret might be over $1 million. So it definitely, the health of the ponds not only has environmental consequences, but also economic ones. And there are two substantial industries, one being fisheries. So if you guys have ever had aquaculture oysters, like at the oyster bar, odds are that in Rhode Island, they come from either the bay or the ponds. And of course, tourism, between the boating, the hotels in the area, the restaurants, it's definitely a big draw for Rhode Island. Kind of going into some of the other kayaking is very popular, swimming, water sports, and they're also a great tool for schools and camp programs to use to get kids in the water. Sometimes it's not always safe to bring kids into the ocean, but the ponds are a nice, calm environment. So keeping them healthy means that we get to get more people out on the water. One of the things that we always look at are activities that affect the ponds, because it's not just what happens directly in the ponds that affect them, but in the entire watershed. So if you have failing septic systems, increased development, all of those and throughout the watershed can really affect our ponds. And they do face a lot of challenges, nutrient loading and pollution problems, climate change, storm impacts, sea level rise, loss of species, and invasive species as well. We've actually had a jelly that's quite, he's little, but he's got a mighty sting, inhabit in the past couple of years. So there's a lot of things that we take a look at on the ponds and are constantly aware of. Now, to give you an idea of who we are as an organization, we were started in 1985. There was a lot of very disparate efforts to help the ponds, a lot of different neighborhood groups. So we all came together and formed one coalition. We are a nonprofit organization, and we look to protect the ponds basically through three different ways: advocacy, science, and education. We have a diverse board of directors who are all volunteers. Only myself as a full-time staff person is paid, and then we have two very part-time staff members as well. So we have over 450 members, but we really do rely on member support, grants, and volunteers to get our work done. So it really is a labor of love. As I said, this is our mission, is to protect the health of the salt ponds. And the first way that we do that is through our Pond Watcher Monitor program. We actually have the oldest marine water monitoring program in the country that's continuous. We've been collecting data since 1985. Now, there are holes in the data, and it was only, I want to say maybe 10 years ago that we had a hydrologist come in and really standardize our sites. But we have enough data that we've been able to kind of keep abreast of what's going on in the ponds for quite a long time. All of our monitoring is done by citizen scientists, and then it goes through the University of Rhode Island's Watershed Watch for analysis. So everything is quality controlled. URI has an EPA certified lab, and we train all of our volunteers to make sure that we have a consistent quality of data. Our data is available online, and it's free and open to the public to use. And we've had researchers use our data. We've been able to have municipalities look to our data for certain things. So it's a resource. It's been an avenue for us to partner with a lot of people in grants by having water quality data. And we test for certain indicators, including dissolved oxygen. So basically how much oxygen is in the water, water clarity or turbidity, chlorophyll A, which is analogous to us knowing how much algae is in the water, how much growing plant matter essentially. Nutrients we look at in the pond, especially nitrogen. Nitrogen pollution from things like septic systems and lawn care can increase the algal matter in the ponds. When that increases, eventually you can have a chain reaction that can lead to things like fish kills because of water that's lacking in oxygen. So we like to keep an eye on that. We monitor for bacteria. For example, I mentioned Green Hill Pond earlier. Bacteria concentrations are high in that pond, so you can't shellfish. That's not true in all of the other ponds. You can. It can also affect swimming and whether or not you can swim. So we track 2 different types of bacteria. We track pH or acidity. We look at salinity in the water and temperature as well. We also collect some background data, including the tide height at the time we collected, the amount of rainfall, and the wind strength and direction, because obviously what we learned last year when we had a very rainy summer, our bacteria numbers, for example, were off the charts. Almost all of the ponds in one way or another had to be closed temporarily to shellfishing, and we had to kind of warn our members about swimming in the ponds. This year, we had a much more normal season and the ponds were fine. Bacteria levels were exactly where we expected them to be. So we know that what's going on in the environment affects what we're seeing in the data. This is just kind of an idea of how we currently display our data. We created what was called the Aquatic Health Index. It's based off of an index that was used in Buzzards Bay, I believe, where we essentially take our data, it's put through a formula, which I know what the formula is, but I'm not a hydrologist, but basically it gives all of our data on a 0 to 100 scale, like a report card. So if it falls within less than 25 or less than 35 rather, it's poor, a little higher, fair, minus, fair plus to good. So not only do we look at the concentrations of what everything is, but to kind of make it more accessible to people, the way we've done it in the past is this report card style. So that's one thing that what we do, and that kind of informs the rest of our mission. Advocacy wise, we are the official watershed council of the coastal ponds in the state of Rhode Island. We are a recognized watershed group. We partner with a lot of organizations to complete large scale restoration projects, including marsh restoration. We've done that on both Ninigret and Quonochontaug Ponds, where we were able to coordinate with the state, other nonprofits, towns. We were able to dredge the ponds and then use the dredge spoil to actually raise the marshes to make them a little bit more resilient in the face of climate change. We just completed an EPA grant with the town of Charlestown looking at nutrient pollution from septic systems and ways to calibrate them to make them more effective. We just did a shellfish spawner sanctuary restocking in Quonochontaug Pond, where we put young shellfish in so that hopefully they will spawn and they will help to bolster the free and common fishery. We've been working on a project in Point Judith Pond looking at the water quality near a causeway that leads to Harbor Island, also looking at the resiliency of that causeway. We've looked at pollution issues in the past through what was called the Horsley-Witten study. And we were also part of the Rhode Island Beach SAMP, which looked at resiliency and sea level rise and how it would affect coastal communities in Rhode Island. As far as education, we do lots of different education groups. All of our education currently is free. We do salt pond safaris, barrier beach walk for kids during the summer. For students, we do field trips. We're actually overhauling our curriculum right now, so that's another project we've been working on. But we always are looking to reach out to schools. Obviously right now, it's with COVID, it's been a little bit of a different experience for us, but we're working on also bolstering our online presence. And I say it's for adults, but really it's for anybody who can kayak. We usually try to do 2 different ponds a year, looking at the environmental, historical, cultural areas on the ponds and kind of just getting people out on the water. Just to show you some pictures, this is our salt pond safari. It's basically dragging a seine net through the water, getting some critters and getting kids hands-on with the animals. Barrier beach walks, showing the kids what's going on the beach, taking them from the ocean all the way back to the pond so they can learn about all the different habitats in that one small area. These are some of our kayak trips. We have maps online if people want to do self-guided tours, but we also take people out as well. And I also do other outreach, anything from newsletters to public seminars. On a good summer, I will be at every fair place that I can be, sharing our mission in South County, doing restoration and cleanup efforts, and basically just teaching people about the ponds and getting them more in tune with this amazing resource in their community. So that's who we are. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thanks, Licia. That was great. We're really looking forward to partnering with you on this project. Can't wait. Wait to see the results too.
Any questions, Chris? Did you see any pop up?
No questions yet. No, I'll let you know if they are. Thanks. Great presentation.
Felicia, thank you so much. It was excellent. And I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. And I just want to thank you all for having me here and working with us. So if you have any questions, just let me know and I can send you the email back.
We're all excited and looking forward to working with you. Take care.
You too.
Okay, I think next on our agenda, we have, we're so grateful to have an SE from Tableau to talk to us about some of the new desktop releases and features, I guess, over the last 12 months. I think she's picked out a few that should be interesting to all of us. And she's going to kind of go through it and show us what they are. And I'd like to introduce Nnenna.
Yay. Yay, great to be here. My name is Nnenna. I am a solution engineer from Tableau. I'm actually located in the Austin office, so great to be here virtually throughout this meeting. I've been at Tableau for almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in May. It's kind of crazy to think about it. I've been at Tableau, half of my Tableau career has probably been in lockdown now. So, but one day we'll be back in the office. I'm just here to talk to a little bit about, let me share my screen, all the new desktop features here in Tableau that released in the last year. So all the 2020 releases. So these are going to be focusing on desktop only, and then just going to be nice high-level overview. So to start, let's start with 2020.1. So we got now dynamic parameters. So we saw a lot of people will have a parameter set in their workbook, and then their underlying data will change, and then they'll have to go back, reset the parameters, and then republish. So you don't have to do that anymore. Now that with the dynamic parameters, as soon as your values change, all your parameters can be set in your workbook, and it will update as soon as you open a new workbook. Next, which is, I'll say there's two, like in this year, there's been two super major features that were released in desktop. This is one of them. Actually, three. There's three really major releases in desktop this year. This is one of them. This is probably my favorite also, is Viz animations. You now have these nice smooth animations when you're doing any types of filtering, sorting, adding of new fields, using the page itself. It just gives you more ways to like tell a powerful data story. And I just think it's a really great way to just move through your data, move through time, and it's a very visual way to show that change. Next, we have buffer calculation. So if you're doing a lot of mapping, there's also going to be a lot of mapping features here. And you want to put that like circle radius around your point. Buffer calculations is a much easier way to do it than previous hacky ways that we had before. But now it's a built-in calculation. All you need is your location, your distance, or the distance you want in your radius, and then your unit of measurement, so miles, kilometers, things like that. And then last in 2020.1 is we now have dashboard extensions for Tableau Public. I know a lot of you in the Rhode Island user group use Tableau Public, and before these extensions that gave Tableau Desktop or Tableau visualizations a lot more interactivity, a lot more functions just weren't available as soon as you published it up to public. So now we have support for image map filters, single checkbox parameters, and filter bookmarks. And if you want to look more what other extensions are, you can go look at the Tableau extension gallery to see a bunch of those extensions you can add to your dashboards. Okay, now we go into 2020.2. Remember I was talking about those 3 major releases? Relationships is going to be the next major release. I am not going to go in depth into relationships, but just in case you want to know where that hit, it was in 2020.2. So we now have this new relational model where you're able to go and make more of that relational connections between tables instead of just hard connections. You can still do your hard joins and unions if you want, but this also gives a lot more complex ways you can interact with your data, a lot more intuitive. If you don't know necessarily how to do what join with each table type, this will do it on the back end. So a lot of new things you can do with your data, but it is a very complicated release. So nothing too in the weeds today. Next in 2020.2, we got set action improvement. So if you ever use set actions, there's now 2 new selection modes where now you can incrementally add and remove values by interacting with marks. And also with set controls, you can now dynamically change the members in the set or add members to the set by using a filter that looks more like a UI that looks more like filtering. So in this example here, it's taking the outbounds or the outcodes, basically the London version of zip codes, and adding them to a average price calculator. So it almost looks like a filter, but it's actually adding it into a set. So a lot easier. We found that this is just an easier UI for most people to use their set actions. And next we have some explain data improvements. So explain data, if you don't know, is our AI to go and take little outliers or marks of your data and try to give you an explanation of why this data might be the way it is. So we've improved it to work with wider data sets now, and we also reformed the model. This is a little, this improvement happened in 2020.3, but I wanted to keep everything explain data together. And so what another improvements they added to explain data were you could actually choose which columns could be included in the model. So if you have a monthly distance here and you don't want to have it look at date or any of those models that you don't think is actually going to impact the model, you can actually choose for it to be included in the explain data model or not. And then it also will give you more of the extreme values to see what explanations you can find too. So a lot up there. Now 2020.3. 2020.3 came with actually a bunch of new functions here. So one of the biggest new functions here, if you're doing any predictive modeling, is we have a new predictive modeling function in the calculated field. So you can do mode quartile, mode percentile. Basically what it's taking the same engine using explain data, putting it into algorithms to go and see if those values are how likely these values will happen given your data. Now we have set action. So this is one of those things where Tableau just didn't have a good reason for it. So if you had a parameter action and you'll click on it, after you unclick on it, it'll just kind of stay clicked. So now it's giving it an action to do. You can go and set an action to do after it's unclicked and after you clear the parameter action. So just a little annoying. So a lot of our customers had. Nice quick fix. And then last in 2020.3, I'm not sure if any people have used a one statement, but whenever you use a one statement and you have a bunch of those cases that equal the exact same outlier, you can all use a when in, And so that way it's going to just reduce how many lines of code you're going to have to do, because they're all given the same outcome. So it's actually going to make it a lot easier and a lot simpler calculations. And last, in our newest release, we have, again, coming up is going to be one of our last big 3, but not this one. This one's just going to be first, we have C-style comments are now possible. So if you want to make comments in your line, in your calculated field lines, to make sure you know what your calculated field is doing, it's going to be a lot easier too. And the former comment system still works. So it gives you both options to do your comments. In line with a lot of our predictive analytics that we've started at the beginning of the year, when plotting them out on your timeline, this now allows you to extend the timeline further out to when your data stops. So that way your predictions can keep on going further down into the future, so you can see where the predictions go, and then as your data actually comes in, it will add to it. So it gives you that extension control that you want. And the last big update that happened in Tableau, I think it's especially hearing the different projects that y'all want to do, especially with the salt pond, I think you're really gonna like this, is added map layers. So before, you're only able to do 1 to maybe 2, if you're using a dual axis, interactive map layers. The other map layers would be like a map box layer that's static that you can't really change. Now in Tableau 2020.4, you can have as many map layers as you want. So if you want a layer dealing with roads, dealing with icons, maybe weather systems, you can all put these all on the same map and have it all be interactable. So people who do a lot of GIS training, people who want to do this just spatial training have been really asking for this. So another really big Tableau feature. So that is going to be pretty much the big desktop overview for 2020. If you'll have any questions, let me know. Kept it short and sweet.
Awesome. No, that was great. Yeah, no, Rachel wrote that. It was great. She was looking for the IN feature before, so thanks for pointing that out. Awesome. Useful.
Now, Nnenna, what would be the best place to, like, if we wanted to, I mean, I know you gave us kind of an overview, but is there one place we can go and kind of look these up and kind of like get more detail?
Yeah, so if you want to look at the releases, every release, Tableau gives a big overview of the release and the type of features it is, and then they also have it catalog for every individual release. So if you look up Tableau releases, it'll allow you to go see what release added what feature, and then you can go down all the way, I think, down to 10.0. So you can go see how Tableau has changed over the last decade or so. Wow.
No, and when you go into Tableau, there's the left panel when you first open up the screen. There's like videos in there that give you training. Do you know if there's videos in there for some of these features that we can just click on and kind of get a quick training that's free?
On the new releases, I'm not sure if that's going to be part of the specific documentation there, but I do think, depending on the new release, especially we saw this a lot with the relational model and other releases like that. Yes, okay, so when I decided to look there, I think—
Yeah, I'm looking at the left panel of your screen there where it says Discover.
Yeah, this popped up on the other side. Here we are. I clicked on the more training videos here, and actually they'll have a new in 2020.4. So that's going to help you give kind of do what I did right here and do a quick overview of everything in that newest model.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Chris, you want to close?
Yeah, thanks again, Nnenna. Thanks so much for taking the time to explain the new features to us. It was great. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I just wanted to remind people, if you're interested in volunteering, wrebello@comcast.net. You got to go there, send me an email. and I'll get you on the list of volunteers because we'd like to kick that project off next week. And if we can't, we'll go the following week. But here's the thing: once we kick it off, 4 weeks in a row, we're trying to get it done. And what we set up is she's given us 5 requirements, and we're going to work on as many as we can. We don't have to do all 5. We'll start with 1. That's the one she wants the most, and we'll go to 2. And when our time's up, they'll have to accept whatever we have at that stage.
All right, sounds like a plan. Yeah. Oh, we got a question from Susan. Do you know yet what day of the week you'll meet for the project?
Probably on Tuesdays or Thursdays. I'm not sure yet.
So maybe Tuesdays or Thursdays. Okay, great.
Yeah, I usually like to do one of those days because Monday holidays don't get in the way.
Mhm.
Or Friday holidays don't get in the way.
True project manager thinking there. Yep. Sure. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks again, Nnenna, for all the updates you gave us too. Bill, thanks so much for leading our project for the Data for Good. It's amazing. Each project builds on itself, and it's great. And for anyone who wants to see all the projects that Bill's done for us, it's on provlib.org on our education page, and you'll find it under our Data for Good page on the website too. So thanks for everyone coming out tonight. And Bill and I will talk about maybe coming up with another maybe spring meeting if we get the Salt Pond project done, and we can
do one more.
All right, sounds
Yeah,
good.
I can't wait till we can meet again in person. I'm sure everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, I think I can't wait for that day. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks so much again for everyone for coming out tonight.
Thanks again.
Be safe. Be well. Talk to you guys later. Thanks.
Have a great evening.